I didn't think much of it the first time. She was just the woman who sat across from me at the cafe near the office, same corner table every Thursday morning. She wasn't like the other regulars, though. No phone propped up, no earbuds. Just a neat stack of papers, a black pen, and a mug that she let go cold. I noticed her before I ever spoke to her. Noticed the way she tapped her pen 3 times before writing. The way she pressed her thumb along the mug handle, like she was testing its warmth. She looked mid-40s, maybe older, but there was a steadiness about her that made me straighten without realizing. The first words we traded were about something forgettable. My coffee spilled, just a little, onto the edge of her paper. I grabbed a napkin, flustered, and she smiled like it wasn't a big deal. "You don't have to scrub it," she said, her voice low, even. "Sorry. I wasn't looking where I don't apologize." Now the margins look less intimidating. That was it. But I thought about her the rest of the day. I kept telling myself it wasn't anything. She was my boss, technically, though not the kind who hovered. She ran the department upstairs. I was just another assistant, temporary, a name she probably wouldn't remember. But on Thursdays, she was there. Same table, same mug, same habit of not finishing her drink. By the 3rd week, she remembered my order. "Still a black Americano?" she asked, when I passed by her table with my cup. I laughed too quickly, trying not to make it sound like a habit. "You'll learn," she said, eyes flicking toward mine before returning to her paper. Habits make the day less sharp around the edges. I wanted to ask what she meant. Instead, I folded the napkin in my hand, corner to corner, until it was too thick to fold again. My phone stayed heavy in my pocket all day. I typed messages I never sent. Things like, "Do you always sit there?" Or "What do you write in the margins?" Then I erased them, one by one. The silence between us was sharper than any words. Sometimes she caught me looking. Once, she smiled at nothing I could see, then lifted her pen as if she'd just remembered something. I wanted to ask if I was the distraction. One Thursday, I stayed longer than usual. My shift didn't start until 10, and the cafe was quiet except for the hiss of the machine. She finished her papers, stacked them neatly, and for the first time, looked at me without anything else between us. "You should be careful," she said softly. "About what?" I asked, though I already felt the warmth in my neck. Her eyes flicked around the room. Only 2 other people sat near the window, not paying attention. She leaned back slightly, tapping her pen against the mug. Someone might notice. I didn't know what made me say it, or why my voice came steadier than I felt. Let them wonder. Her hand paused on the mug, and for a second, I thought she might laugh. But she didn't. She just looked at me, as if I'd shifted something between us without warning. Then she gathered her papers, nodded once, and left the cafe. My phone buzzed a minute later. Unknown number. Just one line. Next Thursday, same table. The next Thursday, I got there early. Too early. The cafe lights had just come on, and the place still smelled more like detergent than coffee beans. I sat at the same corner table she always claimed, telling myself it was just habit. When she walked in, I almost stood. She looked surprised to see me there, but not displeased. Just measured. "You're occupying sacred ground," she said, shrugging off her coat. "I thought maybe it was time I saw the view from your side." Her lips curved at that. Not quite a smile, but close. She sat across from me, papers left behind this time. Just her mug, steaming, untouched. It was quieter than usual, the silence between us not awkward, exactly, but heavier. I fumbled for something neutral. "Do you always come here before work?" She glanced at the mug as though it held the answer. "Not always. Just on days I need the noise before the silence of the office." I nodded like I understood. Maybe I did. "You must like the routine." "I used to," she said. Then, softer, "My ex-husband used to hate it. Said it made me predictable." She said it quickly, like throwing a pebble into water, then watching the ripples spread. I wasn't sure what to do with that. My first thought was that I shouldn't be the one hearing it. But my second thought was selfish, that I wanted to be the one she told anyway. "You don't seem predictable," I said finally. "Not to me." She studied me for a moment that felt longer than it should. Her fingers wrapped around the mug, not drinking, just holding. I felt the weight of the gap between us then, not just the years but everything in them. She'd lived a marriage, a divorce, whole chapters of life I hadn't even brushed against. And me? I was 23 with a head full of unfinished plans, still caught between feeling like someone's son and trying to be someone's man. A voice in my head kept whispering, "This is not for you. She is not for you." But another voice, quieter, said, "Then why is she here, across from you, letting you see the cracks?" Her hand slipped when she tried to lift the mug. Nothing dramatic, just a twitch in her grip. Before I thought, I reached out and steadied it. My fingers brushed hers. Warm, brief, enough to make me forget the air around us. "Sorry," I muttered, pulling back too quickly. Her gaze lingered on me longer than it should have. "Don't be. Sometimes it's nice when someone notices." I didn't answer. Couldn't. The silence swelled between us. Not uncomfortable, not safe either. When she finally stood to leave, she tapped her fingers once against the table, a rhythm I'd never seen her use before. It was nothing, probably, but the sound stayed with me, echoing long after she walked out. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next week, she didn't sit across from me. She slid into the chair beside mine instead, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My chest tightened at the shift, too close, too visible. I could see the faint lines at the corner of her eyes, the way she pressed her lips together before speaking. "You're early again," she said. "I like the quiet before it gets loud." Her arm brushed mine as she adjusted her sleeve. Accidental. Or maybe not. I tried not to think about it, but my focus slipped, from the words to the space between us. We didn't talk much at first. Just sips of coffee, the clink of her spoon against ceramic. I found myself watching her hands more than I should, the way she curled her fingers around the mug, steady but not relaxed. "You look tired," she said suddenly. "Yeah. Exams." "You're still in school?" "Part-time. Trying to make it work with the job." She nodded slowly, like she was piecing something together. That explains a lot. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the word stuck. Instead, I smoothed the crease of a sugar packet flat against the table, folding and unfolding it until it tore. The door chimed. A coworker of mine walked in, spotted me, and raised a hand. I froze. She froze. The air went heavy. "Friend of yours?" she asked lightly, but her eyes didn't leave my face. "Yeah, from the office." She set her mug down carefully, as if the act itself was a shield. "Then maybe we should." But my coworker ordered at the counter and left without looking back. Just a blip. Still, the damage was done. She leaned back, distance settling between us like an extra chair. "You shouldn't sit here with me," she said finally. I swallowed. "Do you want me to move?" Her eyes flicked toward mine, then away. "That's not what I said." We sat in silence. My thoughts looped, sharp and unfinished. She's right. Someone will notice. She doesn't want this. She does. No. Her hand brushed the sugar packet scrap I'd left behind, fingers tapping it once, twice. I couldn't stop myself. "Do you ever feel like people only see the version of you they expect?" I asked quietly. She stilled. Then, every day. The words hung between us, heavier than anything else we'd shared. When we finally stood to leave, we reached for our coats at the same time. Her hand grazed mine, longer than necessary. My pulse leapt. For half a second, it would have been nothing to lean closer, to let the moment tip. But she drew back, smoothing her sleeve like nothing had happened. "You should get to class," she murmured, voice steady, eyes not. I nodded, though the thought in my chest was louder than anything I could say. We almost. And that almost was enough to keep me awake that night. It was late when I saw her outside the office. Most people had gone, the street lamps humming faintly, shadows stretched long across the pavement. She stood near the bench by the corner, coat drawn close, a paper cup in her hands. I hesitated before walking over. She noticed anyway. "You're still here?" she asked, voice quiet but not surprised. "Could ask you the same." Her laugh was a breath more than a sound. She gestured toward the bench, and I sat down beside her, space careful but close. The night felt heavier than the air should have been. She stared into the cup, not drinking. I almost didn't come down. Thought I'd just wait until you left. Why? Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Because I knew we'd end up here. Talking. And I'm not sure that's a good idea. I didn't know what to say to that, so I let the silence stretch. The hum of traffic filled the gap, far off, steady. My hands curled into fists inside my pockets. When she finally spoke again, her voice was softer. I saw you today. At lunch. Sitting with that girl from finance. I blinked. Maya? She was asking about the software update. A pause. Too long. She seemed comfortable. Something in me shifted then. Jealousy? Guilt? I couldn't name it. Only knew it mattered that she'd noticed. She's just a coworker, I said, sharper than I meant. I didn't say otherwise. But her fingers tightened around the cup, knuckles white. We sat like that until the quiet felt unbearable. I finally leaned forward, elbows on knees. Why does it matter? Her head turned sharply, eyes catching mine in the dim light. She didn't answer right away. Just looked, and looked, like she was searching for the thing she'd been avoiding. I don't know, she whispered. Then, after a beat, maybe because I've been here before, wanting something I shouldn't. The words hit harder than anything else she'd ever said. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her I felt the same. That every Thursday, every silence, every almost touch had carved me open. Instead, I stared at my shoes, scuffed leather against the concrete. And now? I asked. My voice cracked. Her breath caught. She set the cup down between us, empty now, like a marker of distance. Now it feels different. The streetlight flickered once, buzzing. She leaned back against the bench, closing her eyes for a moment. I watched her, the rise and fall of her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hand before she folded it neatly into her lap. I wanted to reach for her, to break the silence with something that couldn't be taken back. Instead, I swallowed hard, the question in my chest pressing against my ribs. Would you let me? The words never left my mouth. The following Thursday, her table was empty. I told myself she was just late. Ordered my coffee, sat in our corner, folded a napkin 3 times, then 4. But 20 minutes passed, then 30, and still no sign of her. The chair across from me felt louder than the hum of the espresso machine. By the time I left, my phone was already in my hand. I typed out, "You're not here today?" Then deleted it. The next morning, I saw her in the office corridor. She was walking fast, coat over her arm, papers pressed tight to her chest. I slowed, waiting for her to look up. She didn't. When she passed, I caught the faintest hesitation, her shoulder dipping slightly, as if she'd almost turned my way. Then nothing. Just the sharp click of her heels until the sound dissolved into the stairwell. It stayed like that for days. No cafe. No lingering glances across the office floor. Just absence. Then, late one evening, as I was packing up, I noticed her office light still on. I hesitated outside her door. Knocked once softly. "Come in," she said. Her desk was half buried in files, but her posture was too rigid, as if the papers were only props. She didn't look up right away. "You're working late," I said. "Deadlines," she answered flatly. Then, after a pause, and I needed the distraction. That word, distraction, landed heavier than it should have. Silence settled again, thicker this time. I almost asked if she was avoiding me. Almost. But then she lifted her eyes, tired but unflinching. "There are things you don't know," she said. I waited. "I have a daughter. She's in college. About your age." The words stuck in the air like static. I nodded, though my pulse hammered. "Okay." She studied me, searching for something in my reaction. Whatever she found, she sighed and turned back to her papers. "That's why I can't." She cut herself off, voice thinning. "It's not fair." I wanted to argue, to tell her fairness had nothing to do with it. But my throat locked. I left her office that night without saying much more. Just a stiff good night, A glance too long at her hands resting on the desk. At home, I sat in the dark with my phone glowing in my palm. Typed, "I don't care about any of that." Then erased it. Typed, "I just want to see you again." Deleted that too. The screen dimmed, leaving me with my reflection. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The next Thursday, the chair across from me stayed empty. I kept the seat anyway. Coffee cooling. Napkin folded. Waiting. It was raining when I saw her again. Not the kind of storm that makes you run for cover. Just steady, quiet rain, soft enough to hear each drop hitting the pavement. She was standing under the awning outside her building, coat clutched at her chest, hair damp at the edges. I almost kept walking. Almost. But something in the way she stared at the street, like she wasn't really there, pulled me in. "You forgot your umbrella again," I said softly. Her head turned, startled, then softened. "Seems I forget a lot of things lately." I stood beside her, close enough to hear her breath, but not close enough to brush her sleeve. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the patter of rain, the glow of the streetlight. Finally, she exhaled. "I shouldn't have disappeared like that." "You did," I said, voice flat but not angry. "I know." She swallowed. "It was easier. For me. For you. For me." I turned toward her. "You don't get to decide that." The words came harsher than I meant. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away, like she couldn't hold the look too long. We stepped inside, into the quiet of the stairwell. The hum of the rain dulled behind us. She leaned against the wall, arms folded, though it looked more like she was holding herself in place. "You don't understand," she said. "If people knew, I don't care what they know." "You should." Her voice cracked on the word. "Because I do. I have a daughter your age. A job. A reputation that's already held together with pins. And then there's you, standing here, looking at me like..." She stopped, shaking her head. "Like what?" She pressed her lips together. Didn't answer. So I did. "Like I see you." Her eyes closed at that. A small, sharp sound left her throat, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. She covered her face with one hand, then dropped it again, raw and unguarded. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "I don't know how I let this get this far." "You didn't let it," I said. "It just happened." Silence again, but not empty this time. It pulsed between us, like something alive. Then, slowly, she reached for my hand. Not bold, not certain, just the barest touch, her fingers brushing mine. I didn't move, didn't grab, didn't pull away. Just let it happen. Her hand lingered there, trembling. Then, finally, she looked at me. "Okay," she asked. "Just that." I nodded. "Okay." We didn't kiss. Didn't say anything else. Just stood there in the stairwell, her hand against mine, the rain whispering outside. And somehow, that felt louder than anything either of us could have said. Time smoothed the edges. Not all at once, more like water wearing down stone. Thursdays became ours again. Not every Thursday, not every week, but enough that the corner table felt claimed. She didn't always bring her papers anymore. Sometimes it was just tea for her, black coffee for me, the silence filling itself. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden declarations. No promises whispered in the dark. Just a pattern that shifted from hesitation into something steadier. A glance held longer. A chair pulled without asking. Her hand brushing mine on purpose this time, not by accident. One morning, months later, I caught myself smiling before she even arrived. The clock read 8:47 a.m., the time I used to think of as waiting. Now it felt like arrival. When she walked in, damp from a drizzle outside, she rolled her eyes at her wet sleeve and muttered, "Forgot the umbrella again." I passed her my folded napkin. "At this point, I think you like forgetting." She laughed, not the small, measured sound I first knew, but something warmer. She set her tea down, steam rising between us, and for a moment, I thought, this is what peace looks like. Not perfect, not certain, just here. Sometimes, she still pulled back. Guilt flickered across her face when her phone buzzed with her daughter's name. Or she'd hesitate, as if the world outside might still notice. But the difference now was she didn't disappear. We'd sit on the bench outside the office after long days, the same one where she'd once set down her paper cup like a barrier. Only now, she leaned against me, her shoulder resting lightly, as if testing the weight of trust. "Do you ever think we're making it harder than it has to be?" I asked once. She smiled faintly, eyes on the traffic. "Probably. But maybe that's how it becomes real." It wasn't a fairy tale. She still left her tea half-finished more often than not. I still tore sugar packets into shreds when I got nervous. But those little habits became the rhythm we lived in. And every so often, I'd catch her watching me when she thought I didn't notice. Not with fear anymore, not with guilt, just with the quiet recognition of someone who had finally allowed herself to be seen. The last time we left the cafe that summer, I held the door for her. She paused, looking at me with that half-smile that only ever belonged to us. "You still drink it black?" she asked. "Every Thursday," I said. She shook her head softly, like she was amused at how little and how much had changed. And I thought, this is it. This is ours. Not perfect, not simple, but enough.